Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about some cards in Umamusume where you feel that the cards in itself are going to be extremely good, but once you pull for them, you realize that they either have bad value in terms of lifespan or their training numbers are going to be extremely weak. So I'm going to be giving some examples of these cards, and then I'm also going to be talking about potentially possible solutions for you to fix these cards. So let's start off with the first card. The first one is going to be the Bijin Wick card. The Bijin Wick card is extremely good because she provides with no stopping me. The problem of this card is that at 0 limit break, the numbers are extremely weak. For example, at 0 limit break you only get 16 total wit on a single rainbow click. However, for other cards like Marvelous Sunday, the free-to-play SSR Measure Dober Wick card, the Agastakian Wick card, they have actual good values for a Wick card. Bijin is below average until you max limit break it, which means that if you really want to get a card that doesn't hurt your wit stat by a lot, you want to MLB the Bijin Wick card. If you do not have Bijin MLB or do not have her at all, you are essentially most likely going to be forced to use this card as a borrow slot because the training values at 0 limit break is very bad. And another thing is that for the most part, no stopping me is good. However, it's not going to be the most consistent skill. For example, in Champions Meeting 9, which was Shokyo 1200 meters, nobody was running no stopping me because the track in itself does not allow you to use NSM very properly. So overall, the training values unless at max limit break is very bad. And then later on we get cards that gives you no stopping me, which are going to be overall better compared to Bijin Wick card. So the problem of this card is that the training values are extremely poor unless you get it to max limit break, where it rivals the MLB SRs. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Bijin Wick has extremely good skill, but she has extremely poor training. Much like the Mihano Bourbon Wick card, because she has extremely good skill being taking the lead. Unfortunately though, her training values are also going to be extremely low, but that card is a free to play card and this is a gacha SSR card, so there is a difference. The other issue with the Bijin Wick card is that you can't use the Bijin Guts card, and the Guts one is going to be very good on Guts deck if you want to use it and make a new track scenario, and especially on the mile and sprint champions meeting for the make a new track period. The reason why for the mile and sprint one specifically is because you do not need stamina at all, so you can use the strategy of 3 wet, 2 stamina and 1 speed, even though it's a somewhat of a high roll deck. Provided you know what you're doing, you are going to probably hit the stat lines that you want, and overall this card is extremely good for that since it's a free to play card. So if you really need no stopping me, you can't use the Bijin Guts card, and unfortunately that is a very big concern. Next up is going to be the Throne card. This card is extremely good, especially in make a new track scenario. The problem with this card is that it lasts like a month and then we move on and probably never use this card ever again. So let me talk about how the group cards work in general. Instead of just dating the PAL card like we used with Riko Kishimoto, what ends up happening is that you just instead date the trainees themselves. So for example, you can go with Sabiuli Rudolph, you can go with Tokai Teio, you can go with Tosumaru. I don't know how to spell that name. Anyways, you can date each one of them and they have very good effects overall. You get 2 medium exclusive skills and a free prudent positioning for free, which is very good for front runners. And then once you finish all of them, you basically unlock the final date where you get a lot of stats. For example, over here you get a skill called Reflection Arc, which is a gold version of medium corners. You have to buy single circle, the double circle, and then you can then buy the gold version of medium corners. And it gives you access to a very strong status effects, which lets you friendship train with this card regardless of the friendship, which lasts for a multiple turns. By the way, this is not a permanent effect. So the best way to go about this is that you probably want to finish the date right before the start of the summer, so that you can friendship train with this card, which makes it extremely powerful card in general. And of course, you can get it twice in the career, once randomly from this event over here, and once on command, which of course is strong. Another very strong aspect of this card is that it gives you a lot of speed and width, which if you are using the Bijin Wig card overall in your deck, this card helps you substitute for the loss of width from that card, from the Bijin Wig card. So every single time that you train, you have the option to go with either width, speed, or energy, which is extremely powerful. If this card just chains with your other cards, you will end up getting a lot of stats from this card. And also, once you finish the career in itself, you get a lot of speed and a lot of width. And of course, if you unlock the date before the start of the second year, you get an additional 12 to your speed and 24 to your width. So there's a lot of width, a lot of speed going around with this card. However, the problem with this card is that it essentially lasts about 3 to 2 weeks and a half on global. This is the Japanese version in terms of release date, and unfortunately, Light Hello and the Agias Tekion speed card overall have better value. So this card is essentially your bar slot until the end of Making You Track once it comes out. The next card is going to be the Sweep Tosho Wig card, which is going to be a very unique card in general because of its gold unique skill. So for the unique skill in itself, it gives you 40 specialty priority when your bond gauge is above orange, which of course is extremely powerful. Overall, once this effect kicks in, you will get a lot of specialty priority, which makes your Sweep Tosho card is going to be very consistent when it comes to the wig tradings compared to the other wig cards. However, you want to realize is that this card does not have any trading effectiveness, and the boot effect is not going to be that high. It does have 2 wig bonus, which is nice, but since you do not have that high amounts of friendship bonus, it's not going to actually be as good as you think. Then for the initial friendship gauge, the friendship gauge is extremely low, especially for a unique gimmick like this, because if you use fine motion, you will realize that sometimes she is very far behind when it comes to the gauge, and this problem will probably be the same for this card too, which of course is going to be annoying. However, let's talk about the gold skill. For the gold skill, which is called Unrivaled Wits, provided that in the first 66% of the race, provided that you have never been 5th or higher in terms of position and you haven't rushed, if you are an end closer, this skill will proc in the first half of the late race, which gives you an acceleration increase. However, the very big problem of this skill is the duration that this has, 1.2 seconds, and provided that this triggers in the 66% way of the race, for the long distance tracks, it is not going to have that much of high value. You mostly going to see value in maybe mile, maybe sprint, but once we go to a sprint or a mile CM, you will realize that you already have the common version, which is 0.2 XL, which is fine, but then you have cheerleader, provided that in the first half of the race you haven't been the 6th place position or above and you haven't rushed. On the final straight you will proc this unique, which gives you 2.4 seconds of acceleration, which of course is nice. So you don't really need the gold version of this skill. And the problem then becomes, okay, what about the numbers? This card has very high specialty priority. The problem is that this card does not give you that high amounts of stats compared to the other SSR wet cards. Fine Motion gives you more, while yes, it has much lower specialty priority. Karen-chan has 65 specialty priority, and she gives you similar numbers. So this card is not going to be that good overall. You can use this card, but just know that this skill is mostly useful for mile and sprint champions meeting. It is not going to be that good for long distance tracks. And the other issue of this card is that just 2 months after its release in the Japanese version, Ramiano Wit came out. And I will say this card has like a month and a half in global, and then Ramiano Wit comes out, and in terms of stats it's going to be much better. And of course, since Sweep Tosho Gold skill is only locked to end closers, it will hurt its value, especially since there are cards like the Fine Motion Wit card, and also there is going to be the Nice Nature Wit card. This card is not going to be very good, unfortunately. And here are the numbers as an example. Ramiano Wit outright just beats the hell out of Sweep Tosho in numbers. So Sweep Tosho is not going to be that good, unfortunately. You probably want to borrow this card just for the gold skill if you really want to use it, but the duration effect is not that long, so just keep that in mind. Next up, and oh boy, this one is going to need very good explaining. The Tokai Teio Wit card. So I have seen a lot of people say this card is very good, but in my opinion, I don't really actually see that much value of this card. Let me talk about this card overall. So first things off, this card has a unique effect. The higher the total bond of all your support card is, the higher the training effectiveness that you will get. From what is listed on Game Tura overall, it seems like the conversion rate is that 30 total bond is 1 training effectiveness. So once your cards are completely maxed out in terms of friendship, you will get 20% trading effectiveness, which of course is a very big number. The problem is just getting there in the first place. So let's talk about the other stats. The friendship bonus is decent enough for a card. The speed bonus 1 is nice. The whip bonus is extremely nice. The initial friendship gauge is 20, which is only 5 higher than Fine Motion. Then the race bonus and the fan bonus doesn't really matter. We are out of making new track once this card comes out. And then the specialty priority is the exact same as Fine Motion. So later on, I will compare exactly to Fine Motion when it comes to numbers. So that's pretty much it for the Tokai Teio Wit in terms of stats. As for the gold skill, this is going to be the second card that is going to be giving you Professor of Curvature. This skill, as you already been playing multiple champions meeting, is an extremely powerful skill. However, the card that is alongside of it that gives you Professor of Curvature is Kita-san Black. Kita-san Black is going to be still very relevant in the scenario that we are going to be in when this card comes out. So this is going to be the first instance where you will have overlap when it comes to skills. This is not something that you really should look out for, and it actually is not going to be that great. While I know, yes, some cards give you skills so that you will never buy Professor of Curvature level 1 hint, and if Kita-san gives you the level 3 hint, it's not going to be that big. So you're mostly using it for the strong training and also Professor of Curvature. Let's compare Tokai Teio and Fine Motion side by side. The first issue instantly becomes the training effectiveness. Fine Motion has 15 training effectiveness innately on her, which of course is nice. But for Tokai Teio, you have to increase the bond of your cards in order to get your trading effectiveness. So you have to be about 75% way done already to get Tokai Teio has the same number as Fine Motion. And then when it comes to them being both rainbow, Tokai Teio is going to be slightly easier to get to the rainbow compared to Fine Motion. But she has extra 5 friendship gauge over here, and she does have some hint frequency, so you can get her like some bond from there on a lucky turn. But overall, you will expect both of them to be rainbow at the exact same time. And then you will realize that the Tokai Teio one is only slightly better when it comes to trading compared to Fine Motion. So overall, the trading is basically the same. Those two cards are essentially the exact same cards. But the problem is that, if you haven't noticed, I have put Ramiano Wit over here. This card has 3 extra skill point bonus. She also has 1 extra wet compared to Tokai Teio, and she is much easier to get her unique condition working. So essentially, Ramiano Wet just is better than Fine Motion and also Tokai Teio. So when exactly does Tokai Teio come out? Tokai Teio essentially has 6 months between her and Ramiano Wet when it comes to release differences, but our global is most likely going to be about 4 months. So at that point, you probably just want to pull on the Summer Barzeski Speed and the Fine Motion Wet card over this card, because the problem with this card is that, are you really wanting to drop Kitasan Black off of your deck just to avoid the overlap issue? You most likely will not. However, there is going to be one example deck that I can see working in Grand Life if your favorite character is going to be Kitasan Black. However, embrace yourself. So if you really like Kitasan Black and want to use her, but also want the Professor of Curvature skill, this is what you have to do. This is a full MLB SSR deck, and it is very expensive. I will tell you outright, because you want to use 2 speed cards, and the best ones are the Sababarzeski speed and also the Agiasteka speed ones. And then you ideally want to have a very strong wit card. Fine Motion, Nice Nature, Mr. CB, any of them works, but the most likely one that you have a maximum break at this point is going to be Fine Motion. And then since you are pulling on Agiasteka, you're also going to get Light Hello. Super Creek, of course, if you have been playing for now and bought the selectors and then the 1.5 year anniversary selectors too, you probably will be able to maximum break Super Creek from there. This is a possible deck overall, because if you spend your crystals and tickets on Super Creek overall and then like pulled on the Summer Barzeski plus Fine Motion banner and also the Agiasteka plus Light Hello banner, you probably have all of them MLB. Then you borrow the Tokai Teio wet card. As for the Tokai Teio one, the problem of Tokai Teio is that it is extremely expensive when it comes to using this card on your deck, provided that you wanna borrow it if you are using it on Kitasan Black, if she is your Oshi. This is an example deck, and missing on any of these cards over here is already like a big issue. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The Tokai Teio one is essentially going to be a spender to a Dolphin level card that you really shouldn't be pulling on, because Ramiano Wit is going to be about 4 months away, and essentially you're better off just going for the Fine Motion and the Summer Barzeski speed card better if you want a Wit card. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That was a couple of examples that I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to talk about why I think they aren't going to be a great pull. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you found this video to be helpful, consider subscribing and consider joining the community server, link in the comment section, and I hope to see you in the next one.